What are the chances that Putin is ready to meet with Zelensky, and how is the Kremlin trying to trap the whole world by disrupting the negotiations? These and other topics we will discuss right now. My name is Iryna Uzlova, and today with us is Yuri Rashkin, TV host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English. Yuri, hello, glad to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. Greetings and salutations to our audience members, and Slava Ukraini.
Heroim Slava. And all new day, new statements by Donald Trump, fresh, original, sometimes ridiculous. Trump compared Vladimir Putin and Zelensky to oil and vinegar and said he would not like to present at their meeting, but didn't rule out the possibility that it might be necessary. We'll see. Said Donald Trump, we'll see if Vladimir Putin and Zelensky work together. You know, it's like oil and vinegar. They don't get along very well for obvious reasons. But we'll see. And then it will become clear whether I need to be there or no. I would prefer no. I'd like them to hold the meeting themselves and see what they can do. I stopped 7 wars. Trump counted. I'd like to stop this one. I thought it would be somewhere in the middle in terms of difficulty, but it turned out to be the most difficult war. Really, he has already noticed winner. And Yuri, with what you can compare Trump's efforts to end the Russian-Ukrainian war for today, will he succeed?
Well, if we're going to talk about oil and vinegar, then I think that what brings them together so nicely is a big, a piece of bread, white bread that you can dip into both and mush it around, and it could be really delicious. And Donald Trump could be that piece of white bread, but instead, he's doing the same thing he's always done when he gets into a situation that doesn't look good. Worst case scenario, he declares bankruptcy, and then he gets out and says, I was smart for getting out of that crazy situation. And that's what we're seeing here, where he is explaining to both sides why they should stop fighting and Putin should give up on his lifelong dream of owning Ukraine, and Ukraine should give up on its lifelong dream of being a country and just capitulate, because Donald Trump wants his Nobel Peace Prize. And he stopped many, many wars, including one, I believe, between Azerbaijan and Albania. Congratulations to all people of Albania who may not have been aware that they have been rescued. There could be other conflicts that are not aware of that may be stopped by the greatest president of all of them. This is the world. But I think it is important, between the kind of the humorous jokes of the horror of this war, to acknowledge that Donald Trump is trying to get out of this. We so often discussed about off-ramps, I remember, for Vladimir Putin, that if, this is another opportunity to Vladimir Putin to get out. Well, Donald Trump has given Vladimir Putin every off-ramp he could, and then ended up taking one himself, because he doesn't want to be involved in this. This is Joe Biden's war. The one problem is that the longer he talks about this, first of all, it gets kind of almost funny, because whatever's wrong, if there is no water in the pipes, it's the fault of Joe Biden. And then so that's kind of hilarious on its own, because how long are you going to blame the last manager of this hotel, which is not a hotel at all? On the other hand, that the longer Donald Trump continues to engage one way or another, the longer he makes this whole process to be about him, the more it becomes his war. And this is a war that he can leave and try to get out of, but it's going to be, considered part of his legacy. This is perhaps why he's so concerned about getting into heaven, because, that's the one last final deal he wants to make. Negotiate a good deal for himself, although he's so bad at deals. Well, who knows, where he could end up. But I think that this business about providing, kind of explaining to the world, those who may not have been paying attention, Russia and Ukraine are not getting along. Wow. So that's pretty impressive. And after that, offering to perhaps have a meeting where they can settle their differences, of all places, in Budapest. That is such an ignorant, historically speaking, statement which I think from point of view of every Ukrainian is a no-go, because Ukrainians still refer, as you know very well, to Budapest Memorandum as a time where Ukraine trustingly gave up its nuclear weapons and in exchange got a promise of a special meeting at the United Nations Security Council or something. And when Russia broke the memorandum and the Western countries didn't protect Ukraine, Ukrainians remember this. And so to say, but I wonder if from Donald Trump's point of view, it's about, we fooled you once, you signed something pointless once, we'll sign something pointless again, because there's a precedent. But at the same time, we know that Budapest is in Hungary, and Hungary is as close to United States as this point, I don't know, is Minsk and Belarus is to Russia. And they're trying to find some kind of a middle ground, sort of speaking, where they could meet. But even that location sends a strong message that this is Russia's victory, because Viktor Orban is a representation of Putin's approach to power and fight the democracy, fight. So we have an administration that is very interested in putting an end to this war. And I think that much was admitted by President Macron and others. This is a very big commitment from the president, but at the same time, if a commitment fails, he's just going to say this is Joe Biden's war and walk away. And so keeping this somehow where this, horse can be motivated by a carrot of Nobel Peace Prize, but at the same time, a little bit scared from the point of view of that the Europeans might be walking away and forgetting that United States is supposed to be the big guarantor of peace, because United States can't stand up to Russia. And the longer Donald Trump sends a message of weakness and a lack of American leadership, the longer and faster Europeans are going to be building their own security systems that really have nothing to do with the United States outside of, I don't know, we're going to send you a cake. And I think that's the challenge that Donald Trump is running around, all the while trying to take the attention off of the Epstein case, which is going to be brought back to his face when House of Representatives gets back from their summer vacation. And that's going to be, so he would like to really change the subject before then, either by ending the war in Ukraine or by sending troops and National Guard into Washington, D.C., and now perhaps other big cities, surprisingly, most of which have black African-American mayors. So as they say, Donald Trump is not sitting on his hands, but he's trying to obfuscate and distract, and so far with very questionable results. Had he been able to bend Putin into a pretzel, that would have distracted people a little bit from some of the other problems that he's having. But the fact that he bends over for Putin really just kind of highlights and strengthens the impact of all of his other failures, which of course he spends most of his time explaining while he only succeeds. And if it's a fail, then it's just the way you see the world that's wrong. If you look at this and go, that was a terrible meeting between Putin and Trump, well, then that's your problem, because if you're a Trump Fürsteiner, then you understand that this was a 10 out of 10 meeting, because A, Trump is always right, and two, you have, what's the worst thing in the world? Nuclear annihilation. And if you have number one and number two having good relations with each other, and Putin and Trump are friends, then what could be better? Everything is great. So it's just a matter of looking at the world through this kind of a Trump's frame, and everything is going to look great. And for those people who go, what is Trump going to do when he finally gets sick of Putin? Here's your answer. He won't, because he doesn't see it that way. Everybody else is wrong, but Putin is right. And in this situation, I think that Ukraine finds itself in a unique position of benefiting from some of the experience of Israel and in other countries and just different situations, seeing that with this president, rather than ask for permission, you might be better off doing something that is successful and then asking for forgiveness, because when Donald Trump woke up one morning and saw that Israel was having a very successful war with Iran, then Donald Trump decided to join in and take charge, and now he declares Benjamin Netanyahu a war hero. And incidentally, I guess that means, according to Donald Trump, that Donald Trump is also a war hero. So one thing that is not possible is victory without Donald Trump. He will be there. However, if Ukraine defeats Putin with their new Flamingo rockets that can go 3,000 kilometers or whatever, Donald Trump is just going to say, well, you know, that Putin, he went too far. I told him, you're losing 7,000 men a week. I used to say 5,000, but now I say 7. Who knows what I'll say tomorrow? Could be 10, could be 15, because Donald Trump likes number 5. This is what we're seeing. This is what we're observing. And Ukraine, if it, is successful at forcing Russia to sit at the negotiation table, this is something that Donald Trump would be actually grateful for, I believe, to Ukraine, because he also wants to see Russia at the negotiation table. He just doesn't have the whatever it is takes that to put pressure on Vladimir Putin. But if Ukraine can do it, great.
Yes, really, we see that Putin understands only language of power, and that's all. And really, our missiles, our drones can tell more than all Trump's and other leaders' words in reality. If I understood correctly, Trump wants to shift responsibility to Europe and to Ukraine, and also profit from it by selling weapons to us and to Europe.
Yes, but I think what Donald Trump would have liked to do originally was to forfeit this war on behalf of Ukraine. Because he was of the opinion that if Donald Trump doesn't support Ukraine, Ukraine doesn't have a chance. Well, Donald Trump would like to forfeit. But it's not working out for him, and I think it is really important to acknowledge this. Kind of a crucial little point here is that we keep discussing the situation from the point of view of the great Donald Trump. Donald Trump met Zelensky. Donald Trump met Putin. Donald Trump met European leaders, or European leaders met with Trump, as if he is the deciding factor here. But when Zelensky came out a couple of days before meeting between Trump and Putin and said Ukraine will not accept these terms, and therefore Ukraine will not capitulate to Russia, it devalued and took the wind and any value out of the sales / point of the meeting between Trump and Putin, because yes, Trump wants to meet with Putin, but it really has nothing to do with Ukraine. He just wanted to meet with Putin because they have their own things that they want to discuss. I don't know, perhaps Epstein case or whatever else. But Ukraine was the official reason for their meeting. And when Ukraine says, we're not going to bend for Russia, then it loses meaning. And therefore, instead of really this being about Donald Trump, it's really about this average Ukrainian grandma that is refusing to surrender to Russia, because Zelensky knows that he's going to have, as New York Times put it, political challenges if he bends over for Russia, because Ukrainian people, including those Ukrainian grandmas that are going to take Zelensky's butt out, and he knows he doesn't have the flexibility to surrender. And that's just a reality. And so while we talk about Trump, it's really the average Ukrainian that is committed to this, the independence of Ukraine, that is having as much input and power over the situation as the President of the United States.
But we see that American thoughts also should be important to Trump. I don't know exactly. It seems to me sometimes that now he listens only to himself. But one of the Trump's favorite newspaper, New York Post, calls for pressure on Putin and even suggests ways and possibilities to it. And we see it on the front page. Even with picture. Maybe Trump doesn't like reading, but he should see it. So when will Trump get his head together and start putting pressure on Putin? And Yuri, how do you think? Is there anyone Trump is even capable of listening to now, or no at all?
Well, if we listen to Trump's biographer, Michael Wolff, Trump doesn't listen to anyone and he doesn't read anything. So which means that he looks at a picture and makes his judgment. It's kind of like, I think, how people who are not able to read, illiterate people, pay more attention to visuals to figure out what's going on. And in this situation, frankly, I don't think that Trump is looking that bad, because what reality is that it's Putin that's putting pressure on Trump. It's Putin who is bombing American-owned factory in Ukraine and ignores the fact that, it's with Biden, you can kind of rest assured that Putin would have been a little nervous about bombing an American-owned business factory in Ukraine. But with Trump, no, Putin doesn't have to worry, and this is a really clear demarcation line of how little regard a Russian president has for American colleague, because in Ukraine, I think everybody very clearly saw that with this factory going up in flames, that was the credibility of the American government, American president, because if Putin is not scared of America to this extent, and we know, I agree, Trump only understands power, and Putin, both of them only understand strength and power. This was a demonstration of Trump's weakness, because he is representing American interests, whether he likes to or not. He can say that this factory was built when Biden was president or whatever he wants to say, but he looks weak to everybody. And even if Trump thinks that he looks great, everybody else will know this is the king, the emperor is naked. And just because the emperor is surrounded by a bunch of people who are telling him that he's very well dressed, doesn't mean that anybody else can see in the smoke of that factory in Ukraine that president has no clothes, because he can't put pressure on Putin. And these kinds of almost enabling pictures that say, oh, the great Trump. Yes, President Trump has an incredible amount of leverage and tools that were left to him from the prior administration. If he chose to use them, he could do more sanctions. He could do more weapons. For crying out loud, President Trump has access to $3.5 billion left from the past administration that can be used to help Ukraine get more weapons, and has to be used by the end of September, or that money disappears. If President Trump wanted to put pressure on Putin, he could do it in many different ways. But really, it just seems like all he can do is remind President Putin that he's got some vulnerabilities, people could be attacking him, or he's losing a lot of men on the battlefield. And this is a situation, that's the extent of the pressure that this president is willing to put on his Russian counterpart. The only question that I think arises then is to what extent this is a bad management and or willing not conspiracy so much, but just helping Putin because he wants to help Putin, not because he's bad at running America, but because this is working out for Trump. And my concern for our great country is trying to understand what is the line for Americans where we acknowledge that having somebody who has another country's best interests at heart is more important than how our economy is doing or how any particular function, because it seems like sometimes Americans are more willing to accept a president who is willing to do Russia's bidding as long as our individual financial situation is improving. This kind of an exchange for, I thought it was fascism with a 20% discount, but maybe now we're just, willing to be second fiddle to Russia and do Russia's bidding if our prices are lower or our, retirements are higher. But it's pretty clear that with this type of policy, all of this well-being is going to evaporate because our national security has a tremendous impact on our internal economy. And if we are not the country in the world that is respected like it was for 80 years since the end of World War II, our individual economies are going to suffer as well. And this kind of groveling before a wannabe dictator is going to backfire for everybody. But we're just hoping that we're going to tell him he is nice right now, he's great, look at Zelenskyy and how nice he was in his meeting with Trump, how he agreed with everything, kind of a yes, dear approach, yes, dear. And sometimes if you're president of Ukraine, you have to do that. But we see kind of everybody taking a knee to Trump, and I don't know what people are hoping for, because there will be no nurses coming in to hospitalize him, and and his ankles are growing every day, but he's still president of the United States and is likely to remain so for the next 3 years, and then J.D. Vance will inherit the wind. I mean, these policies, I guess. So the situation is looking rather worrisome, and it is really a huge benefit for democracies worldwide that Ukraine is fighting Russia and is complicating life for at least two of these dictators, simply because Ukraine wants to exist and for its own survival. So I guess we can just thank Ukrainian people and do what we can to help them in their fight against Russian aggression, because the situation is looking pretty dire.
Interesting detail. While we're speaking, I'm watching Trump's new statements without sound, but I see his look. And he's wearing a cap along with a suit. So he isn't bothered by his weird look. But when he looks at Zelensky, everything should be as they like in White House. Such detail, but it seems to me that it can tell us about a lot of things.
I think this has been best personalized at this point by Governor of California, Gavin Newsom, who has been quite popular in social media lately by trolling president. And in fact, I believe it was today where you saw a picture of Gavin Newsom with this kind of a strange orange paint on his face and a red hat. And it just looks strange. And that's, I think, what's so important to understand with this president is how he just seems like there's something wrong with him. And unfortunately, the red cap over, to hastily put on makeup and the look like he just came back from a golf course is his standard operating. It's almost his uniform look, kind of like you just interrupted me from playing golf. But that's the president, and that's his style. On one hand, we can say that this is more transparent and more communicative administration than we've had, because Trump speaks more than several other past presidents combined. On the other hand, every time we see him, it's a various form of embarrassment, between the way he looks to the things he says to the things he omits. And yet this is a person that Americans have elected twice to be our president. So it puts kind of one into kind of a thinking state of mind, kind of thinking, how could we get here and how can we get out of here without losing what we've had for 250 years. The country, I think, is at a very interesting and kind of a dangerous precipice right now, because every day that President Trump continues his policies, he brings us closer to abyss. Right now, having troops in Washington, D.C. is, on one hand, yes, people understand that this president is interested in using force, and he's not opposed to these things, and this is a kind of a picture that would look good for his voters, but at the same time, there's kind of a restraint by average people in cities is only going to last so long, and I think that administration knows this, and they are waiting to see when the situation is going to get out of control. Again, we have a president who is looking to make any problem worse, including problems that he's causing, and when we see how he comes back from meeting with Putin, and Putin is giving him advice on how to conduct a democracy in America, and President Trump says, that's what I've been saying, we should get rid of these mail-in ballots, even though which country uses mail-in ballots? Russia. Of course, Russia isn't a democracy, so I guess that only proves Putin's point. But nonetheless, This is and when this is administration that conducts searches, has FBI conduct searches in the house of former National Security Advisor John Bolton. This is just a signal after signal that is being sent to people who disagree with this administration that they need to watch out because this administration is vengeful and the loyalty is far above expertise. In fact, expertise is not really needed. It only slows these people down in trying to, I guess, make money. So I think that on one hand, Americans are not used to feeling the need to protest, because if we don't like a certain government or a certain political official, we wait until elections and then we vote for the other person quietly. We don't have to have a big uproar, uprising, anything. But at the same time, we're looking at a situation where administration is doing everything it can to make voting harder, to gerrymander districts into picking their own voters to guarantee or try to guarantee wins going forward, and really trying to do everything they can to strengthen their hand, not in a democratic way, but in a power way that they understand. It's a very worrisome situation that it's hard to say how long America has of these press conferences with the president who is really would like to rather play golf than do anything. But if he's going to take care of his enemies first. It's a remarkable situation in a country that considered itself leader of the free world and now finds itself here.
But I noticed one big article in CNN edition, and a lot of both Republican senators, congressmen are really unhappy about Trump's policy, according to Vladimir Putin. And they, all of them, not only Lindsey Graham, but he also tells that U.S. must not let Putin win anyway, even in one chapter of our war. Also, French President Macron said that if Putin wins, this will literally open the gates of hell and to China and all of this. So this Trump should understand such voices, or no?
He should, again, if he listened to anybody, but I think that he is interested in having good relations with Vladimir Putin.
But it's not, it's not only about Trump, it's about the United States in general, about reputation and all these details.
Yeah, but listen to him. He says that our country is now respected. Before, they thought that we were dead, or some kind of a strange statement that before Trump, it was all horrible. With Trump, it's all great. And senators can say lots of wonderful things, but if they're not going to vote, then it doesn't really matter. And it is an amazing historical moment that we've arrived at, where Lindsey Graham is today's John McCain, where now we see that Lindsey Graham is the only one and the loudest voice who talks about standing up for American national security interests. Yes, this is just talk, but at least that's the only place where the talk is coming from, is Lindsey Graham. And we know that in the end, Lindsey Graham is going to vote the way President wants him to, and all of these efforts are for naught. But there's certainly a number of people in both the American political establishment as in just in society in general that find it very unnerving that United States is being such a close friend with Russia, that this is not just about communism. This is about not just dictatorship or democracy. This is about a foreign government that's controlling the fate of the United States and actions of the United States. And we see this through appointments of different people in the Trump administration, such as Tulsi Gabbard and others, who hold Russia in high esteem and who Russia calls to be their friends. And the chair, whatever person in charge of I'm thinking of Sergio Gore, but there's just an HR of White House. This is a situation where if politicians can't even point at a snake and call it a snake, then what is their purpose for being there? It would be just really nice if they would also vote for it instead of just saying things. But to expect that Trump will listen to senators who vote the way he wants them to, but they complain, well, yeah, it makes him mad because he doesn't want them to complain. He wants them to embrace proudly whatever the point of view that he promotes. But they're not really a threat to him because they, if they were a threat, they would impeach him. But I guess if they couldn't impeach him twice, I guess that means they really love him. And they're just kind of scared to say it, but they love him. It's the fact. And they let him do whatever he wants. But they have their own kind of like dignity that they're trying to protect and kind of a fig leaf. It's particularly interesting to see somebody like Marco Rubio, who is stepping all over his political legacy because he's really interested in being a president in 2028, even though at this point it looks like he's completely losing to J.D. Vance. But it's people who are trying to solve their own political agendas, who are not interested and not thinking about fate of the United States. Just the last big, beautiful bill highlighted to what extent that whole transaction was a lobbying operation that has no concern about what's actually best for the country as a whole. That's what, again, that's who we elected, and now who we're going to be electing or re-electing when it comes to Senate and Congress. But it's also a question of what are Democrats doing? Because so often I hear from my viewers, where are Democrats? Why aren't Democrats saying anything? And just as a reminder, Democrats are very loud. Democrats have very little they can actually do, but they're the ones who are bringing up a lot of these issues, and they're the ones who caused Speaker of House Representatives Mike Johnson to send the House on summer vacation early so they would avoid bringing up the Epstein case under any circumstances they possibly could. So I think Democrats feel like they found this golden key to Trump's operation and can't wait to get back into D.C. to poke, that lion in the eye a few more times. But in the end, it's the Republicans and Republican senators and elected officials and voters that are the sponsors of this, I don't want to say terrorism, but are the cause behind this administration.
Yuri, I see one thing, that we have a lot of questions and challenges and no answers, or such answers that are not about Ukraine and rare peace. Now,
I agree, because I feel like I'm speaking about things, trying to explain, especially to viewers in Ukraine, what is going on. And I realize that I'm not saying that much about Ukraine, because these calculations, what does Epstein case has to do with Ukraine? Nothing. But it's a motivating factor. And I don't think Donald Trump cares if he would get Nobel Prize for India and Pakistan, or for Russia and Ukraine, or for Mars and Venus. He just wants one because Barack Obama had one, and so he wants one too, which reminds me of a nice meme that I saw where the Nobel Peace Prize committee is sitting around and they're saying, hey, this year, just for fun, let's give it to Obama again.
Yuri, thank you very much. Thank you for your time and your opinion, and for all your work, and for your support of Ukraine and our soldiers and people. See you next week. Take care, please.
Take care. Thank you.
Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English. My name is Iryna Uzlova. Guys, thank you for watching and joining us. Please subscribe to our YouTube channels. Believe in yourself. See you next week.